Appreciate you jumping on our webinar today. So again, for those who are joining us, my name is Bradley Keefer from Keen Decision Systems, the Chief Revenue Officer over here, and we've got Bill on with us today from MADTECH.AI. Thanks for joining, Bill.
Sure. Hey, Brad.
Awesome. So a couple of housekeeping things as we dive into this today for everybody. If anybody has any questions, there is a chat function available. Feel free to just throw your questions in the chat. This is being recorded live as well as the recording will be available after, as well as the PowerPoint deck, and there is an insights guide that will be available at the end. So appreciate y'all jumping on here today. Again, let's walk through a couple introductions. Again, Brad Keefer, Chief Revenue Officer at Keen Decision Systems. For those who are unfamiliar with Keen, we're a 15-year-old company that's really out to disrupt the marketing mix space. So we're a marketing measurement platform with a media planning optimization capability and a revenue forecasting. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to measure 100% of your revenue in order to optimize your media planning to be able to then build out better, more predictable, revenue forecasts that factor in marketing and its impact. And one of the big challenges that we have in this space is getting solid data to come into our system. So for anybody who's used to building models, what you know is that, getting good, clean, structured data is often the nemesis of being able to build a solid model. It's the whole garbage in, garbage out. And one of the companies that we're partnering with is MADTECH.AI. And, Bill, appreciate you coming in. If you could introduce yourself and MADTECH, we can then dive into the problem that we're looking to solve together.
Sure, you bet. Happy to do so. I'm Bill Lederer. I lead MADTECH.AI. We are a spinoff of iSocrates. iSocrates is a company that's been working specifically with marketing and advertising data and analytics for the last 10 years. So scar tissue on our scar tissue of handling first, second, and third-party data. And over the years, having done that for so many clients, working with really precious data and solving lots of challenges for them, we basically have put that all together in an AI-based offering called MADTECH.AI that's up and running, and we've had reasonable success so far in working with Keen. The idea is to be able to bring that data together as easily and seamlessly as possible to be able to feed the marketing effectiveness tools, including marketing mix modeling, linking that back into in-market campaign activity and seeing if we can try to accelerate all of those insights and hopefully improve the performance of marketing.
No, I appreciate you jumping on. As we mentioned, even the title of this webinar is from data chaos to marketing clarity, right? At the end of the day, Keen has a really solid ability to measure and attribute your impact as well as build predictive models. But as I mentioned, that data problem is really a problem that we face with 100% of our clients. Whether it's a huge problem for them or it's there's a few channels that are missing, it is a problem. And a lot of it is tied to the fragmentation or marketing channel proliferation that's happening right now. So what are you seeing within MADTECH as you guys think about pulling in data and structuring data? How are you thinking about this challenge of just, building a data philosophy, building the capability to actually pull it in? And what are you guys seeing at MADTECH as it comes to just building that structured data process?
Sure, you bet. So I think a good place to start is exactly what you shared. This is a really fragmented marketplace. Many different kinds of data, different suppliers, and data pipelines that none of us can count on being up and running consistently. So not only do you have data quality challenges, but the starting point is, depending upon the nature of the use case, you could have dozens of data sources. That is not an unusual situation for larger marketers. So the first thing is, what resources do you have to be able to support it? The answer, pretty much without regard to the size of organization, is nobody has enough resources, particularly when it comes to labor. A lot of this has to do with things like data engineering, ETL engineers, API engineers, data warehouse architects. But part of our fundamental challenge is that the data may be coming from CRMs, CDPs, from email, from demand-side platforms, SSPs, ad servers, many different types of partners in the marketing ecosystem. And the starting point is very rarely are all those things easy documented APIs where the quality of the data to begin with is in good shape. So you mentioned sort of garbage in, garbage out. The overall starting point is rarely is that data in good usable form. So if you can get to it straight in a straightforward way, and that's a big if, because of the over 300 connectors that we work with, the minority of them would be documented APIs. For the most part, you're dealing with everything from screen scraping and JSONs to things that can be really, really ugly. And unfortunately, rarely is the documentation, if it exists, totally up to date. And then, of course, the challenge is if, God forbid, you need to get more information, you got a problem, getting prioritized access to somebody technical at the point of the data source that you're trying to work with, getting a live human being to be able to help you, well, unless you mean a lot of revenue to that data source, it can be a huge challenge. And of course, they make changes to the way in which they're configured, typically without telling you in advance. So if you're lucky enough to have one of these data pipelines built, there's a pretty high likelihood they're going to make a change, and you may be the last person on the planet to know that there's been a change. And very often it's only after the fact when you realize, oh my God, the data, it's not refreshed. I'm working with old data that came from yesterday, last week, last month, and you realize I may be making decisions, or I absolutely made decisions based on bad information. Not only was it a quality issue, it could just simply be old. So that was the long answer to the short question about kind of what am I finding. What we find as a firm is that this is a complex and challenging situation, and that is before you get to the hardest part, which is the transformation of the data, or the harmonization of that data, taking it from whatever the state is that you get it in and getting it into a usable state in a data warehouse. And in many cases, it may be the destination of that data may, in fact, need to go to more than one place. So this is not pretty. In a way, I apologize in advance for those of you that are coming from an engineering or data science background, but in truth, this is kind of a plumbing issue. A lot of times we're talking about architecture. So Brad gets to work on, is this a mid-century modern style house? And this part of our business, which we call iPaaS, which is an integrated platform as a service, it's not pretty, it's plumbing, but you don't get to build Brad's mid-century modern house until we make sure we get the plumbing flowing consistently and regularly into the home. So that's the part we're talking about right now.
Yeah, a couple things on that is like I've yet to meet a company who isn't in pursuit of building a data lake. Everybody seems to be in process of building one. And then the question I ask is like, what are you going to do with that? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like now I have all the data. Now I'm like in data overload, and then, analysis paralysis sets in. And at the end of the day, we always try to reset folks to like, what's the decision that you're trying to make, right? And what is the speed of the decision? So if you're spending all of your time trying to build the right data architecture, keeping up with API changes, at the end of the day, the business starts to fall behind because you're making too slow of decisions. And this problem is becoming more and more real, especially in the marketing landscape as digital channels become popular. Everybody's launching a retail media network. It doesn't matter who you are at this point, which creates a plumbing problem, as you're saying, but it also creates a decisioning problem. So people are paralyzed in making decisions, so they end up just defaulting to just like, well, this is what we've done before. Let's make it 2% better. Well, it doesn't make it right. And part of the reason that we feel that like a lot of brands are like, we're spending in 45 different marketing channels. Why? It's like, I don't know. And then it's like, then you have others who are spending in 10 who want to spend in 45. And it's like, well, why do you want to spend there? And why aren't you? It's like, well, I don't know how to get the data structure. So like, really, there's so much value in the first piece that I think you're talking about, which is like, how should a company think about like a data philosophy? In my opinion, it's really like, well, what decisions are you trying to make, rather than, I think a lot of folks are approaching this from, how do I get all the good, right, clean, structured, normalized data? Then I'll decide what I'm going to do with it. Like, why is there a disconnect there from your perspective? Like, what are you guys seeing from a data philosophy gap perspective?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of tactical thinking, not a lot of strategic thinking. So I think the starting point in this discussion is marketers tend to be pretty short-term oriented, pretty tactical, and it's really important to think about what are the questions likely to be and the problems that we're going to need to solve, not just today, next month, next quarter, next year. So one of the quick things that I would say here that is a challenge that you all need to think about in terms of data governance is what are we collecting and how long are we going to store it? Now, Keen needs to have historical data. It is not helpful if it's a very short data retention policy. But there's a challenge, and that is the finance people will say, well, wait a minute, hey, this cloud cost is getting pretty high. Do we really need to keep all this? Do you need all this data? And I can tell you that it is hard to go backwards in time and collect the data when you want to be able to query and develop these better models if the data isn't there in the first place. Extremely hard and sometimes absolutely impossible to go back. So what we're talking about right now, you got to figure that out up front. You don't have to have all the answers, but try to get that data and keep it. And for the most part, we're talking about, in the case of marketing mix modeling, you've got to have more than a year's worth of data for most of the questions that you're going to want to be asking. And I come from a data science background. I'm a modeling guy. You want to back test. You want to be able to test, train your model, make sure that it's really working. So is that, Brad, is what I'm saying consistent with your experience?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like really, and from our angle, because we're at the forefront of strategy, right? So we're looking at like, I can answer all these big questions your CFO has. All I need is this data. And it's just like, oh man, like, I don't know if I have it. Like there's gaps in it. The other big thing in here too is there's an over reliance on agencies to control the data. And I'd encourage brands, it's like, it's your data. Go own the data. Go tell the agency it is your data. It's your spending.
Well,
And at the end of the day,
first,
you're being held accountable.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to say you ought to make sure that it's your data.
Yeah.
So it is not unusual. I can think of a couple of contracts that I've seen where it's actually the customer is giving up the ownership of their data, in one case to a tech company, in the other case to an agency. So do not assume it's your data. It should be your data, but contractually, is it your data? I just double check on that. So it doesn't mean that the agency shouldn't have access to it. But in the
Yeah,
end,
exactly.
who says it?
Exactly. And really, like, at the end of the day, it's like, so what's at stake if you don't do this? For us, it's like without the right tools, without the right data architecture, and without the right modeling, as a marketer, you're losing time and you're losing money. Like, and your ability to prove the return on the investment, or prove the value that you bring to the organization. And that's really what we see as we start to build these models, because again, we're focused on that decision science that comes out of it. So what is the output of our model? It's a media buying plan with a revenue forecast. Well, that's built based off of that historic measurement. But if you don't have the right data architecture in place to be able to plug it in, it just leads to slower moving. Like I can name a dozen, marketing mix models that are out there that are like, okay, and then I'm going to take 6 months to collect the data, and then I'm going to toss it over the fence, and then I'm going to do, and it's like, guys, you're marketers, you're making a decision with a PowerPoint deck that took 6 months to build, and the end date of the data in that PowerPoint deck is last June.
Yeah.
Like, the world has changed 10 times, and that data is now irrelevant. So the what's at stake without having the right data pipes, without having the speed to decisioning, is literal time and money. Like, you're losing that. And then marketers complain to us about like, hey, I need a model that can defend my marketing budget being cut. And it's like, well, it's because you're showing up with just the wrong insights, with outdated insights, with incomplete insights. So really, at the end of the day, like, this is the value of our unified solution, and the partner is, how do I get good, clean data quickly into a model that can measure the value historically through a marketing mix model, that can produce a media buying plan and a revenue forecast, and then create a closed loop system that can update in near real time. Now, I know there's going to be some who are going to roll their eyes and say, do I really need marketing mix modeling in real time? No, but you need real-time decisioning. That's the difference here. There's some who are peddling real-time marketing mix measurement. By adding a week, are you truly changing the coefficient? No, but what you're going to be able to do is adjust that plan moving forward, and that's more important. You're making the best decision with the latest information, and that's the value of our joint solution. I mean, Bill, what do you see as the value from the data side of this conversation around this closed-loop platform? Like, what's the value that you see?
Well, I think there are a couple things immediately. And the first is, do you in fact have good quality data If not in real time, then close. Or are you looking at disconnected, siloed data, or data that's simply unusable? So even before we get to the decisioning, 100%, not 90, 80, 70, 100% of our customers have data challenges, and they are finding out too late after there's something they can do about it that they've got a problem. So the first thing is, in putting this together for marketing mix modeling or for any strategic decisioning purposes, do you have a problem? When do you have a problem? And get to it as quickly as possible. For the larger marketers on the call, oftentimes, and maybe outside the marketing organization where there's responsibility, maybe the IT organization that's got data pipeline responsibility. Those are typically not the world's most nimble people. And my question would be, is there a sufficient agility in the way you're organized to be able to make sure you have the data when you need it in the condition that you need it consistently? So that is a organizational issue that plagues many of the larger organizations. Brad, there was a question that Julie asked about how long does it take in order to be able to prepare the data, let's say for a CPG. That's a good question for you to answer. In our own experience with CPGs, our experience is that if it's the first time, it can be months, not for the work that we do, just to be able to get the internal permissioning and to be able to get exactly what we're asking for. It's not unusual that it can take months. It's not typical, but not unusual. Once we get it up the first time, it typically is, we don't have a problem after that. But depending on the organization, if it's not really set up to be able to support marketing in the way we're talking about it, it's not unusual that it can be months. It's not that it's that hard technically. It's that somebody may not have a primary responsibility, or in all candor, you may be dealing with social issues in your company where it's in a different part of the organization, and for whatever reason, it's not a priority for them to share that data with you. But what's your experience in terms of how long it takes to get on?
And what Bill's talking about is really that full architecture and infrastructure experience, getting it to be 100% complete and repeatable, things like that. For sure, it can take time. And what we find is that, just to be clear, like, we can get 85% of the way there. It's always that last like 10 to 15% that, we're still waiting on this guy, or like this lady over here is doing this thing, or like we're still waiting for a permission here. But what we generally find is our implementation time is under like 4 weeks. So the amount of data that we need, that's really what unlocks, like, our modeling approach in and of itself is what unlocks our ability to move faster. So I'd say about 90 to 95% of our implementations take less than a month. And the reason for it is the amount of data and the type of data that we need is far less than whatever is in your mind generally for most folks around marketing mix modeling. Because marketing mix modeling in the old sense used to be, I've got to go collect 87 different spreadsheets of information with all this granular detail and all of these markets and then all this. We don't need that. Keen just needs the working media spend by week by marketing channel. And we're able to actually utilize our different approach, utilizing a multiplicative econometric Bayesian approach with the priors that come with our system. That's how we're able to build models off of spend only. So even in the worst case, we've got brands who are tracking their budgets loosely in a flow chart or in a Google sheet. Like, I use that and build a model, because the times where you had to have the data perfect and complete in order to get the right PowerPoint deck from the traditional consulting firms, those times are gone. We're a software-based application, so we can build iterative models. So the time to value, you might build a model that's 80% complete, but you're going to do it in 2 weeks. Right? The modeling is instantaneous in our application. It's that full infrastructure that may take months because people are involved, politics are involved, as Bill's talking about. But what our team is doing from the beginning is we're taking the time to think about this scalable and repeatable process, and then bringing Bill and his team in to make sure that we understand how do we build those hard pipes. So again, there's an iterative way to get to an answer in days to weeks. And then there's a way to solve the infrastructure problem in weeks to months. A lot of it is contingent upon, your teams on the brand side and how fast we can move.
I don't want to leave people with a thought that, oh my God, this is going to take months. So to be clear, how long can it take? That's how long it can be if the organization isn't set up to be able to provide access.
Mhm.
Um, how easy can it be? We're going to show you something today where it takes about 5 minutes to build a data pipeline,
Yeah,
literally.
why don't we go there, Bill? Because I think, we've talked about this tool, and I know there's going to be some people who are listening to this saying, like, there's no possible way. My experience with marketing mix modeling and data is that it takes all this time and months and effort and all that kind of stuff. Let's just go ahead and show it. Like, we're happy to prove it to you. So, Bill, let's talk about the data from the left to right. So what we'll walk through as Bill's pulling this up is essentially the iPass solution, which is going to allow you to go in and pull the data and then structure the data, normalize the data, which then feeds out into Keen's platform through an automated data transfer. And then from Keen's platform, we're able to build your marketing mix model, build the media plan simulations, and then feed that back in because it allows us to lock in that plan back into the MADTECH.AI solution. So let's go ahead and prove to people that this is real. So, Bill, take
Yep.
it away on the data side.
Excellent. Hopefully you are seeing MadTech AI in front of you. Is that what you're seeing on your screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so we've already logged into MadTech AI, and we are looking at the module. This is one of several significant modules that exist within this platform, where we're going to take a look exactly at how we onboard the data and then be able to flow it into a data model and visualization. And then if you can hang with me for just a couple of minutes, I will bring you right into a marketing mix model. So in this case, we have a choice of building a straight pipeline, but I'm going to take you into how this winds up running into a template, which essentially is the data model and visualization. So I'm going to sort of show you the 360. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick a template. This happens to be a data model and visualization for a lead generation business that is seeking motivated sellers. We've literally hundreds of these, so don't get too hung up on the fact that it's a motivated seller. But I'm going to go ahead and select the template. We are now in the iPass solution, and we're going to go ahead and literally steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we are done. This whole thing should take about 5 minutes or less under normal circumstances. So we've already selected the template. In this case, think of the template as a data model that we're intending to populate. We're going to go ahead and start identifying data that we'd like to be able to pull in. So in this case, I'm picking these a bit at random. Here I've picked 3 particular data sources. So while Keen can be an output, it can also be an input. In this case, we're going to pull some data from Keen and Google and AirCall. For those that aren't familiar, AirCall is a call center software. So this is lead gen that's going into a call center, but there are hundreds of these and lots of different possibilities. And it's easy to be able to find these connectors. If we don't have one, we will build one for you without a problem. You can see request a new data source, and we go ahead and we build that for you. But these are essentially ones that sit on the shelf. We've now picked the data sources we're interested in. Here we're going to tokenize. We want to be able to get access to your account for each one of these data sources. So we fill in this information, and there's a self-help guide all the way through. You can either reach out to a person or there's built-in contextual help. We're going to need to transform the data. We're going to harmonize. That means that we need to do the mappings. Most of the time, our customers will say, okay, I'm going to go with what is standard. But there are those of you who may want to customize the way in which we're doing the loading and transformation. So you can either go with standard or you can go with custom. You do not need to know Python or SQL. You don't need to have a certification in anything. It's all plain English language. You can put in custom calculations if you want to, make choices about what you're including. You may want to correct for certain data or add computations. So that's custom. Again, it's something that you can do yourself, doesn't require engineering background. Where you want to send the data to. In this case, we're defaulting to the data warehouse at MadTech AI. So that could be a backup data warehouse for you in marketing, or it could be, for example, you might have Snowflake as your main data warehouse, and you may want to select that. We typically strongly encourage keeping a backup copy, very inexpensive to be able to hold this and in secure multi-tenanted storage in our data warehouse. for you specifically in marketing. So you've got a backup available. So here we picked the default data warehouse. We picked it. We're going to need to schedule the data pipeline. So are we going to overwrite, or are we going to add and append? How frequently would you like to update the data? When would you like to get started? You pick that from the drop-down menu. You're going to confirm. You have just built a data pipeline. Here are samples of data pipelines. This is full enterprise grade. Everything is built for large organizations that have layers and layers of protection and requirements. You will find that this will stand up, I think, for really, no matter how sophisticated the enterprise. It's an easy process, and it can be done by those that are in marketing or supporting marketing. So that is MADTECH.AI iPaaS. So now you've built it. We're done. This whole thing took 5 minutes or less. If you had many different data sources that you needed, maybe it would be a couple more minutes. But the assumption is that we've got the data connector built, and there is a team 24 hours a day supporting this, constantly making sure that this is running and that the data is flowing. Now, you're going to want to use this. We talked about going to templates. Well, in this case, motivated seller. That's the data model that we picked. I'm going to show you marketing mix model in a second. This is what the part of MADTECH.AI looks like. Once you've gone ahead and created the data pipeline, there are hundreds of these AI-based models to be able to work with. And you can either have them built for you, that you can adapt something that you've got, or you can use what we have. One of the elements that we wanted to cover in this webinar, Brad, was to talk about the impact of AI in marketing and the use of it. What I want to show you in just a second is what happens when you add AI to a BI environment. We've all been working in BI previously. I'm going to close this before I open something else. There's lots and lots of functionality. For those of you that are working in sophisticated BI environments, you'll recognize what we're talking about. But there are going to be some things that you may not have seen before. So, for example, what happens if we want to have AI analyze the results of what's happening in this dashboard? You can pull it anytime you want, really detailed analysis with recommendations on any aspect of what you're looking at the widget level, at the overall dashboard level. Plain English language goes right to it. And this is true for all of the templates that we have. So, and then you can apply AI, in this case, if you would like, to the individual widgets to be able to learn more. Or maybe you'd like to ask questions and you want to use plain English language. Sorry, if somebody's got a question, I can't see it from what I'm doing. So maybe, Brad, you could help me with anybody that might have a question or a comment.
We're good so far.
Okay.
I mean, I think the big thing from here is once you now have the structured data where the partnership comes into play, is that structured data can then be fed automatically into Keen's marketing mix modeling.
Correct.
And then we become that measurement and optimization engine.
So what I'd like to do here, see if I can pull up for us, and bear with me for a second. I'm bouncing between a couple of different environments. What I want to find for us is, here we go. So typically you would have many different templates or models. You want to have that marketing mix model available to you for easy access in what you're doing tactically as well as strategically. You want that as a living, breathing thing. Here's the marketing mix model where Keen can sit right with the rest of what you're doing, tactically taking a look at all of what's going on in the rest of your marketing. And here, in this case, we are feeding from Keen as the data source into a data model, and that is a marketing mix model specific to this particular instance. And what we're doing is we're revisualizing that data right here, including, in this case, a simulation tool that allows you to be able to establish your media budget and your ROAS target as an example and be able to run simulations. And what you're getting back is here scenario planning and specific outputs. So here we've got a combination of the data pipeline, your own in-market activity, and Keen as your model provider. And these visualizations can change. They can be something that is set for what you're looking for. You can use really pretty much anything that you'd like for visualization. But what we've just done is dramatically cut the amount of time necessary to be able to get this done. And then what's happening with that data pipeline is it's running continuously with alerts set so that if there's any kind of discontinuous data or problem, not only do you get alerted, but in our system, there's built-in root cause analysis to let you know what may be causing the problem. So that is how we make this a lot easier and simpler, and without having to engage too many technical folks in supporting marketing.
So a question came in. It says, are there any tricks on how to and how to not organize for success in managing data for marketing?
Okay. Well, the first thing is if you can manage to minimize the requirement of non-marketing resources where they may not have cycles that run as fast as those of us in marketing, that would be a good place to start. So if you're dealing with an IT organization that is supporting many other departments, very often they are not able to keep up with the changes that take place in the different platforms, agencies, the different data sources that you're going to need, and moving as quickly as your reporting requirements. So if you can manage to kind of keep it closer to the department and your own resources, that would be one thing. Second is recognizing long-term what your potential informational needs are so that data is being collected currently, even if it's not being used currently. Brad, in your world, what would be nice to have but not absolute need to have that you would like to have marketers keeping and available to you, but may not be absolutely essential? What would you wish they would keep?
Yeah, I was gonna say honestly, like it's even having that clear definition around like what's the decision you're trying to make, and then being able to like simplify the data request. So like what Bill's talking about is like they can go capture everything in the world, but if you're trying to make a decision on how much money do I spend in which marketing channel and in which week, it's up to Keen from a modeling perspective to be able to reduce the need that we have. And honestly, like we can build models off of working spend only by channel. And then like if you just have clicks or impressions, that's a nice optional add-on for sure. But anything beyond that could only help inform the model. So like we utilize a Bayesian approach. So if you have other other studies that you're running, if you have other data that you want to override some of the priors and kind of play with integrating that knowledge estate, any extra data would be helpful, but it's not required to spit out a model that has a 4% accuracy in regards to our ability to predict the future based off that media buying plan. So at the end of the day, it's like there's other data that's available out there, like the attributions that's coming out of the platforms. But to be honest with you, most platform attribution is incorrect anyway because it's overstated. But again, there's all kinds of data that you could have. Our recommendation is think about the decision you're trying to make, simplify the data that's required to model to make that decision. And then at the end of the day, I wouldn't have a collect everything for all purposes that may come up. Really kind of brainstorm that the data or the data that's going to be needed to make decisions. Again, you're going to hear me harp on it all day because that's all we focus on is like, what is the decision you're trying to make? We have so many brands who are going from left to right when they should be going from right to left. Think about the decisions that you're trying to make rather than just having data for the sake of data. I think that's also creeping into this problem. And that's, one thing that we see is people overcomplicate the data collection problem, which is also part of the reason why you have a data collection problem. So there's just a couple ways to think about, how we look at it from our lens. But I just want to show here real quick, just so that way folks know on our side, what Keen is doing. So Bill talked about how the data goes out and then it comes in, things like that. But just to kind of showcase it, so from that system, what we're able to do is all of that data, no matter how you tag it, actually feeds in here. So you can now see that the target, the list of all your marketing factors all of this is that time series data that Bill was just talking about structuring. It's all basically transferring from his data warehouse into the data warehouse inside of the Keen platform. From here, we're then able to run the regression model. So this is where you get your traditional, marketing mix type of model where you could see the historic results, the incremental lift that's coming from each of the marketing channels, as well as the profit ROIs. So again, we're not focused just on ROAS, we're focused on return on investment, and then ultimately the utopia metric, in our opinion, is the net present value, which is the long-term incremental profit that's being driven by marketing. You'll then be able to see the fit of those models, and then from here you're able to run those future scenarios. So there's some basic simulators that exist out there, but what Keen is doing is we're building these probabilistic, I always talk about it as like we're building hurricane models. Like, so I'm going to say, here's the upper and lower bound. If category goes up 5% versus if category goes down 5%, what's the range of output? So essentially, these are all those different scenario planning capabilities that Bill was talking about, to the point where our output is a weekly buying plan with the projected results, optimizing for the interaction effect between channels, as well as the flighting, and then understanding the overall risk associated with that revenue projection that we're putting out. So all of this data, feeds out of the MADTECH.AI system in an easy, structured way. It runs through our measurement model, through our marketing scenario planning system, and then back into the MADTECH.AI platform. So that way all the data comes together. Again, creating that closed loop system from data in to measurement to decision out, back in to create a dashboard for accountability purposes back in MADTECH.AI. So that's how we've come together to create a closed loop system. I will pause here. There is one more question. It says, I have an understanding that my target audience based on RFM segmentation is converting better, let's say 1.5% of total traffic. Can MADTECH.AI help identify personas or even cohorts that may convert so that we could create media plans for the targeted audience?
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Arun. Okay, so the answer today is that it is a service that we need to create for you. It needs to be customized for you. Ask me 6 months from now, and we should have converted what we do today as labor, and it will be in MADTECH.AI. So you're a little ahead of us. The answer is, yep, we're familiar with this. We already do this work today, labor-based. And the challenge is to go ahead and code that in the system so that it can be fully integrated to MADTECH.AI. Like many companies, we are trying to go from labor to automation, and this is a really good example. We do a lot of this work today on behalf of, interestingly enough, Arun, we probably do more of this right now in the nonprofit space than we do it in the for-profit space. That shouldn't be the case, but it's interesting that the larger nonprofits can be very sophisticated taking a look at these audiences. So, yep, it can and will be done, but you're a little ahead of us. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, and right now Keen has a unique capability where we have a portfolio modeling capability. So we do already measure and optimize, a marketing mix model with the media planning based off of the audience information, but we rely on the information about the audiences to come from the brand itself. So again, as long as the data is structured in MADTECH.AI, tied to audiences, and then when it looks at execution from a buying perspective, our modeling capability already exists to optimize by audience. We're just not doing any of the execution or the data tagging that way. So the capability is already available for the optimization on the Keen side, but it's not available for data in, because we don't do the data in piece like we're talking about with MADTECH, and then the execution. Yeah. So there is a capability that already does exist inside of the Keen platform for this problem.
We were talking about digital plumbing. There are aspects of this that are pretty intense and not particularly exciting to talk about. But the truth is that not everybody's data, when we're talking about CRM, a lot of times there is a data hygiene and enrichment. So to get to the personas, not everybody's got a clean persona. Very often it's, here's what we have, clean up the CDP or CRM. Not only do we need to have things sort of organized correctly, but fix the corrupted data, and then augment the data. So, gosh, we need addresses, personally identifiable information. Maybe they're for whatever reason they've got incomplete. Add the email addresses to the mailing addresses. There's a whole part of this that is not MADTECH.AI, that Isocrates, the company from which MADTECH.AI has been spun, that I also run, that we are doing day in and day out. The higher the fidelity of the data, the better the outcomes. But as Brad has said, there is I wouldn't call it cheap and cheerful, but let's say that there is a straightforward, less expensive, more abstracted approach, and then there's also the more granular. And it really kind of depends on your business model in terms of what the level of investment and fidelity is that is required. So the more you know, the more questions you're going to be able to ask and answer.
Perfect. We'll see no other questions come in the chat. Bill, just want to take this opportunity to again thank you for your time today. For those who are wondering how you can get in touch with us, we will leave our contact information inside of this or in the leave behind, and we will display it up here on the screen as well. So if you have any questions,
hey
feel
Brad,
free.
I see there's a question from Stacy, and she says, "How real are the benefits of AI for marketers currently? Does it support any of the data collection process?" Well, I guess I can speak to that first.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we've invested pretty heavily in AI now for years, and I don't have any regrets. I'll give you a couple of quick benefits in our own experience. We do an awful lot of media work, and what we saw over the last few years as we scaled our business was situations of overbuying, underbuying, failing to meet KPIs and campaigns, and finding out later than we could do something about it that we needed to course correct. The first thing I would say that AI has done for us is it has reduced dramatically, I mean really dramatically, the number of errors, or we'll call them anomalies, with regard to overspend, underspend, and failure to meet KPIs as a result of being able to identify things really quickly and giving us root cause and being able to get to what needs to be done. That simply wasn't available. In our case, it's essentially happening in real time for most of what we're doing, and it really wasn't available, and it wouldn't have been cost effective. But the combination of AI, cloud, the evolution of BI capabilities, I would say that has paid for the development costs of MADTECH.AI. That would be number one. Number two, to be able to iterate in market while you're running campaigns, in order to be able to make improvements to improve performance and effectiveness, aside from errors, just being able to learn from what's working and what isn't, and to be able to accelerate the optimization, that's a huge payoff. So no regrets about AI whatsoever. It's more like we're on a journey. What's this going to look like in a few years? Pretty amazing, I think. So does it support the data collection process? Well, I just showed you MADTECH.AI's iPath solution. Can't do that without AI. And it has dramatically shrunk the amount of time that it takes to be able to do it and to be able to find any challenges in the pipeline building process. So, yep, we're pretty big on it, and we know that there's significant measurable output there. Last thing before I hand it back to Brad is just the time savings. The folks that are doing this kind of work are not inexpensive. They're hard to hire, hard to retain. We're really, really dependent on them. And with AI, we definitely need them, but we may not need as many as we used to. And in the future, I suspect that it's probably even less labor intensive because of these tools. So yeah, good, strong, measurable benefits.
Yeah, keen seeing the same thing in our own data collection that we're doing. So a lot of our smart mapping, where even if you take I'll use the basic example of like I've got a CSV and I've got 10 different CSV exports. I'm going to drag and drop it. We do all the smart mapping to the point where you don't have to map anything manually anymore. It does it all for you inside of the application. You always have the ability to check it, but that process in and of itself saves a bunch of clicks and a bunch of time for folks. And then where Keen is using a ton of AI is we do believe there is a world in the future where we'll be able to actually build guardrails around everything from data collection to measurement to buying, and then doing more automated buying for 100% of the working dollars. So really thinking about it from a day trading type of perspective, our platform is enabled to be able to start executing toward that world. And then we've got all the AI agents as well. So anybody who's reading like Microsoft CEO says SaaS is dead. It's like, yeah, we agree. So we're utilizing all the agents that we're building as well to be able to do data interpretation, as well as, because at the end of the day, it's like we're a really sophisticated model, but marketers typically hate math. So how do we really utilize AI to train marketers to understand the math, to understand investment banking, to understand like all these pieces? So AI is definitely going to change, how marketers make decisions and how many marketers you end up needing. And then you start layering into that the automated, AI or the content generation, things like that. We'll save that for the next podcast. But again, Bill, appreciate the time. If there's any other questions, again, our contact information was up on the screen. You'll have it in the follow-up information as well. Final thing, Keen just released our new insights report. So we looked at over 350 brands, about $1.27 billion out of the $7 billion that runs through Keen's system. So we took an expert of that group of models that we're running every single day, and we did a full analysis. So if you want to know, like, what should my mix be? What is everybody doing? Where are you seeing the greatest returns by channel? Go ahead and scan that QR code, or access the MADTECH Insights link through keends.com, and go ahead and grab that free resource. Again, we just released that today here at the beginning of January. So appreciate everybody jumping on, hoping to continue the conversation. And Bill, the 1 + 1 truly equals 3 here. So appreciate the opportunity and the partnership. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.